Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this Fusion 21 webinar, Building a Safer Future, focusing today on air quality and in particular on sort of painting and how we improve the environment. Delighted that so many of you have been able to join us this afternoon. It's great to see everyone. If you haven't been to a Fusion webinar before and aren't familiar with this software, then I'll just run through one or two protocols just to make sure that everything's okay. If you have problems hearing us, you obviously won't hear this message, but you might see the audio, and you can try and adjust the audio settings, though sometimes it's actually easier to dial in and dial back out. That does seem to work for some people. If you are having any problems at all, then please do use the question button and one of my colleagues will come to you. And also, please do use the question button. We do want to hear from you whilst the audience are on mute. We do want to engage with you as much as we can, so please do feel free to ask questions at any time. We'll be monitoring the questions and I'll be asking the panelists the questions as we go along. So without further ado, I'm happy now to introduce today's panel. And we have Leigh Hamill, who's the Sales Director at Bell Group, Chris Leighton, who's VP Sales and Marketing at Airlite, and then Lewis Chenery, who is Environmental Manager at Bouygues Energy. So welcome to you, our panel. Before we get into the panel presentations, what we thought might be interesting was to play you this video, and I just have to warn you, the audience, we haven't done this before, so we're hoping that it does all work very well. I think it will, but this really will set the scene for what this afternoon's webinar is about. So, I will just press play.
In 160 seconds, you will decide how this story ends. This is a story about us, the indoor generation. A generation that spends 90% of its life indoors. It all started the day we left nature behind. We filled our homes with lovely things and all the stuff we wanted. Our homes became places you would never want to leave. Artificial light replaced daylight. And we built our houses so that nothing could escape. We cooked and showered, breathed and played, slept and sweated. But we had closed ourselves in to a point where nothing could get out. So when the air turned bad inside, we tried fixing it with chemicals. And we put in little artificial suns everywhere to make the darkness bearable. That's when things started to happen. Hard to notice in the beginning. Some needed help to sleep, to breathe, to not itch. Many of us even started to feel sad. So we turned on happy lamps to make the sadness go away. Then, scientists discovered that the air inside our homes is up to 5 times more polluted than the air outside. And that the lack of daylight can affect children's learning and increase blood pressure. It turns out that kids' rooms often have the highest concentration of toxicants in the house. In fact, millions of homes are unhealthy to live in. They discovered that living in damp and moldy homes increases the risk of asthma by 40%. and I learned that millions of people like me suffer from asthma and allergies caused by a bad indoor environment. And so, here we are. How the story ends is up to you, because it's not written yet. If you care about the indoor generation, do something. Begin to think and live differently. Let light and fresh air into your life again. Even small changes can make a huge difference for coming generations. Learn how at theindoorgeneration.com.
So, hope you enjoyed that video. And as it said, the chapter hasn't been written, but hopefully over the next hour or so, our presenters will see and tell you how their organizations are starting to address some of the problems facing the indoor generation. So, without further ado, I'm now going to hand over to Leigh, and hopefully I will be able to give him control of the presentation. If not, Leigh, just shout and we'll I'll hopefully come to your rescue. Okay,
no
over to you, Leigh.
No problem at all, Andrew. So thank you very much for the introduction. For those of you on today's webinar who don't either know myself personally or you don't know who Bell Group UK are, Bell Group are the UK's largest painting contractor. We do a significant amount of planned works, and we're a fully national business from Inverness all the way through the country down to Plymouth. But I'm not here today to talk about Bell Group as such and the intricate details of our business. I'm here today to talk about building a better future for all of us. The environment and our planet is the biggest challenge that we're faced today, and certainly my objective and my goal over the next 10-15 minutes is to make you all or hopefully give you all something to think about in terms of what is driving us moving forward, and some of the things that we've uncovered in our research to strive for a better future and ultimately to improve the air quality for ourselves, so our own families, our employees, and everybody that we interact with. So the journey started for us a few years back, and in fact, before I go into that, I'm not going to talk about in depth our environmental strategy. I'm going to talk about 2 or 3 key elements that we feel very strongly about in our industry. But the story and the journey started a few years ago when our chief executive, Craig Bell, was looking at the industry that we work in and looking at, what are other people doing? What are the big levers? What are the big strategies? What are the big initiatives to try and improve both air quality and the environment overall? And the harsh reality was there wasn't a lot happening as far as large national paint contractors go within the construction industry. There just wasn't anything. And really since that point, there's been a massive passion from the top down in our business to try and do the research and uncover some ideas that will ultimately help the future that we live in. So the 3 areas that I'll talk about today are carbon neutral, and I know that everybody on today's webinar will understand what carbon neutral means, but just hopefully give you some ideas that you could potentially take away for your own businesses. I'm going to talk about volatile organic compounds, or VOCs, which those of you from a paint background or who have procured painting packages will know what VOCs are all about. And lastly, I'm going to talk about nitrogen dioxide. Now, I'm a sales director, I'm not a chemist, but I will talk about nitrogen dioxide and how, in terms of the scale of our business, that we are contributing to nitrogen dioxide, but also some of the really innovative ideas that we'll come across to try and reduce those nitrogen dioxide levels. So, starting off with carbon neutral. We have a very bold target of becoming carbon neutral by the end of next year. And given that we have 32 offices, 1,750 employees, and 500 vehicles on the road, it's certainly no mean feat. And there's really kind of two elements of our strategy to become carbon neutral. And one of the areas is carbon offsetting, which again, I'm sure most people on today's webinar will have come across at one point or another. And effectively offsetting means you calculate your CO2 footprint and you look to offset that by, you know, for all intents and purposes, you know, planting lots of trees, etc., etc. But one of the ideas that I wanted to kind of just give you all food for thought is how that can work with your own customers, or for us with our customers, in terms of looking at your supply chain and working out what your carbon footprint is, and then potentially working together to offset that almost as a partnership. So one of the things that I'll certainly look to talk to my client base around is, if we have a contract for, say, 3 years with client A, well, we can work out what the CO2 footprint will be over that project, and then look to work together to try and offset it. And again, this isn't about, you know, Bell Group trying to do something in isolation that we don't want anybody else to do. This is for the good of the planet and the world. So if anybody on the webinar thinks that that's a good idea, you know, go and look into it, because ultimately it'll benefit the planet. And I will talk about some other ideas later on that sit in another section, but could sit in this section in terms of reducing our CO2 footprint. But one of the big ones is renewable energy. One of the things, especially in the nature of the type of work that we do, that amazes me, there's so many residential houses around the country now with solar panels, but you see very, very few commercial properties with solar panels on them. So it's one of the areas that we're looking at within our 32 branch estate, particularly at our head office where we have a lot of land. Can we implement solar panels? So volatile organic compounds, again, I'm a sales director, I'm not a chemist, but those of you who work in the industry will be very familiar with VOCs. And as the logo suggests on the right hand side, they're not particularly great for the world that we live in. And typically solvent-based products that we would use in our industry would have higher levels of VOCs, and thus worse for the environment. They contribute to smog, and they have a negative impact, and that leads to a variety of health implications. Now, I'm certainly not being critical of the manufacturing side of our industry. If anything, I would compliment the big manufacturers for over the last 20 years. I think the work that's been done to reduce the nasties out of paint products and get them to a really low VOC point. But the reality is that we, as the market leading paint contractor in the UK, we see it as our responsibility to take it the extra mile. So the manufacturers can only do so much in making products that have lower VOCs, but the reality is there still are products there that have higher VOCs. And we feel that we need to take it that extra mile to basically get these out of the marketplace altogether. And as such, we've been working with our supply partners, and we currently have an agreement with Axo or Dulux as the main brand that you would know, to exit the solvent-based products from our business by the end of next year, closely followed with agreements with the other manufacturers and PPG and Crown. And those of you who understand the water-based, solvent-based product, and I think there's a bit of a myth that solvent-based products are light years ahead of water-based products. The technology is advanced at such a rate in the last 20 years. There's some fantastic products there. And in case it comes up in the Q&A, yes, I'm very aware that water-based products historically have been more expensive than solvent-based products. But that's part of the commercial conversations that we've had with our supply chain. It's not about adding cost into the supply chain. It's about having the right commercial conversations to drive sustainability. And if we in turn are buying more and taking that ownership of buying more of the less hazardous products, it gives the manufacturers more money to invest in the technology for the future. And really, this will happen at some point. So whether it's the government that tells us that we can't use these products anymore in 5 years or 10 years time. It will happen. So we as market leader in our field, we feel very passionately that we need to drive it, and that's exactly what we're trying to do. I'm now going to talk about nitrogen dioxide. So nitrogen dioxide, or NO2, for those of you who don't know, it's one of the largest causes of air pollution. And I think going back to what's a very, very powerful video that we saw at the start of today's session. Again, being a national business, we have 500 odd vehicles on the road. The largest contributor of NO2 comes from vehicles. So we feel a real onus to do something about that. And again, this isn't a Bell Group thing. This will be true of any person listening to me speak today. And the air pollution caused, again, we saw some of those statistics and some of the elements in the video there, but they're not good for us, and we need to do something about it. So I'm going to talk about 2 elements here from our business point of view. And before anybody reads the word electric and says, Leigh, come on, I know electric vehicles, I know what they're all about. For me, this is about sharing some really interesting, a real interesting business that we've uncovered as part of our research. So there's a company launching next year called Arrival. And it's not just a case of going down, your local car showroom and buying an electric van or electric car and that's it. This business is a full ecosystem. It's buses, it's taxis, it's vans, it's cars, it's charging infrastructure, it's micro factories. And anybody that's got a fleet of vehicles or is looking to move to electric, I would encourage you to look at these guys. Now, UPS, Royal Mail have already made significant orders, and we're hoping to follow suit. So again, I appreciate everybody understands electric vehicles, but certainly within my social networks and my business networks, I came across very few people who had heard of Arrival. So it's something that I would encourage you to look at. And I'm not a shareholder; it's just something that I think is really, it's really going to drive us forward into the future and ultimately help the air. So electric vehicles can help reduce the amount of NO2 you're putting into the atmosphere. But one of the really amazing innovations that we came across as part of the research was a product that we saw over in Italy that actually breaks down nitrogen oxide and has a positive impact on the atmosphere. And that product is Airlite. And I won't steal Chris's thunder because I'm sure he'll talk much more knowledgeably about their business and what they stand for than I. But I just wanted to share some statistics from a case study of a student accommodation job that we've worked on, which was circa 12,000 square metres. And the benefit of using this product in this environment, we literally used almost 99%, or there was 99% less VOCs that I talked about earlier on, because the product has literally 0. There's no hazardous waste from the product because it's naturally mineral based, which again I'm sure Chris will talk about, and its CO2 footprint is considerably less than what was on there before as far as this case study goes. And the last thing that I would have loved to have put it up today, but I'm certainly a man of ethics and we don't have the final analysis yet, but the last statistic I would be talking about is a 50, 60, possibly upwards reduction in the nitrogen dioxide levels in the areas that we've painted using this product. So yeah, it's a really interesting innovation, and it's not a comparison versus the current products that we use or you would use for your customers. It's a completely unique product, and it's something that we'll hear more about in the next half hour or so. So I have one more slide, and it was really just a suggestion to everyone listening that if we go back 20, 30 years ago, it will seem crazy that to us today that only at that point was health and safety becoming such an important element of the tender process. And then the social value act came in 10 or so years ago, and the social value element of the tender process became so prevalent in everything that we do. And I would just ask everybody to consider is now the time to really ramp up our thought process on the environment. As I said earlier, it's the biggest challenge that our generation faces. And anything we procure work through our supply chain, or if there's customers on the call today that are procuring work, or even people that procure work for us, there's going to be an impact on air quality and on the environment, because we need to get goods from A to B, we need to get operatives onto site and back and forth. And it's really just something that I wanted to flag as a consideration, that maybe now is the time to start looking and saying, well, should there be more stringent eco targets in the tender process? You know, reduction in fuel levels, or carbon reduction, or carbon offsetting, or nitrogen dioxide levels, etc. So yeah, it's just really something to consider. I'm now going to pass on to Chris from Airlite. As I said, a really innovative product that we kind of came past, and as part of our research and our commitment to try and do more for the environment. I'll now pass on to Chris, and thank you very much everyone for listening.
Thanks, thanks very much, Leigh. Just before we do pass over to Chris, I just wanted to ask you a question that's come up from the audience. We might not get to cover this again, which is specifically about electric vehicles, and whether or not you think that the move to electric vehicles might be something that's driving or to be used to drive local authorities' clean air policies.
Yeah, I think so. I think electric vehicles, we know that, in 20 years' time, we're all going to have an electric vehicle. So we want to lead the way. And I think in terms of local authorities, it's a really good way of driving that cleaner air solution. And it's certainly something that we would be open to, discussing, as I'm sure, other people in this industry would be keen to discuss with that customer base as well. So yeah, hopefully that answers your question, Andrew.
Okay, yeah, thanks very much. Do keep your questions coming in. I know we've got a couple more, but I'm also sort of conscious of time. So moving over to you, Chris. Yeah, when Leigh introduced me to Airlite, and again what it can do to improve the environment, and again back to the video, that those of us spending most of our time indoors, I did find it really fascinating. So really looking forward to hearing your presentation.
Oh, thank you very much, Andrew, and thank you very much for the nice intro, Leigh. So I'm Chris from Airlite, here to talk to you about the joy that is the next generation of paint. The most exciting things happen in the paint industry for a generation as well. And it is really pretty cool. If we look at the evolution of paint over time, we've traditionally used chemicals to colour surfaces, chemicals with VOCs in, chemicals with all sorts of elements within. Now we're seeing a shift towards the more environmentally conscious eco perspective of, can we reduce the environmental impact of the built environment? This is not just paint, it goes through everything we can. And I believe Airlite really signifies the next step to going beyond the limit in the environmental impact to actually going some way to rectify it and help improve it. So Airlite represents the next generation of paint in that we're starting to turn building components to life. We're starting to bring them to active elements of the building. So painting with Airlite is not only environmentally friendly, it also is part of the solution, in that once painted, the walls, the ceilings, the surfaces naturally purify the air around them, breaking down some of the chemicals that we're producing through other means. They're also naturally antimicrobial, so killing bacteria, also killing viruses, and we've tested against H1N1 influenza and other A-type influenzas. So extremely relevant at this moment in time. But look at why, even in the current climate, the air we breathe and air pollution remains the greatest threat to humanity. So this is official World Health Organization stats. These are not something we've come up with. Air pollution and the air that we breathe is responsible for over 7 million deaths a year. And as we saw in the clip at the beginning, the indoor air is typically worse than the air outside, significantly worse. So we tend to think, oh, it's bad to walk along the street next to the traffic, it's bad to sit in a bus in traffic. But what about the air we're bringing into the buildings? because that generally started off outside and we bring it in. Maybe we put it through some filtration systems that might take some of the particulate matter out, but we bring a lot of the toxins into the building and then we add pollutants. And that itself has been more relevant recently as well, when we look at the excessive, or rather the increase in use of cleaning products. So cleaning products are the greatest source of indoor pollution that we're adding to spaces on a day-by-day basis. Others are all the building materials and components that we're putting into the space. So the paint that we're using, the polish, the clean, my deodorant, hairspray, anything else that we're putting into the built environment is only deteriorating the quality of the air that we're breathing. And by addressing this indoor pollution, it has a significant impact on our own health and well-being, but also our ability to fight viruses or infections ourselves, as cited at the bottom. There's been quite a lot of research done in overlapping nitrogen dioxide levels with mortality rates linked to COVID-19, and proving that particularly in younger generations, the air that we're breathing has a huge impact upon our ability to fight off infections. So how did we do this? Sitting here with a blank piece of paper at Airlite, a few people, oh, let's put a ding in the universe. What should we do? Should we create electronic spaceships? No, let's transform the paint sector. Yes, okay. How are we going to do that then? So we started by looking at Earth's greatest natural air purifier, which is our own atmosphere. How does that purify the air, considering we've been polluting it for billions of years and we can still go outside and breathe clean, fresh air that doesn't smell? This is down to a reaction that happens naturally in our atmosphere. And the first stage, where we've got all the pollutants, all the air mixing together, we've got energy from light. The first stage is that we see the splitting of moisture molecules, humidity. So water, hydrogen to oxygen, H2O. But if we actually split that, we create negatively charged ions. For the technical people, these are termed hydroxyl radicals, which are very excited little fellas. And these latch onto all the pollutants around them, and we start a chain reaction that breaks down the pollutants, thus purifying the air and killing some of the nasties in there. So, for example, we talked about nitrogen dioxide. So nitrogen itself is not toxic. Oxygen itself is not toxic. 2 nitrogens and 1 oxygen is laughing gas, which can be good fun. 1 nitrogen, 2 oxygens, nitrogen dioxide is toxic, and that will kill us. So the raw components of everything we've got mixing around in the air aren't toxic in their own right. So if we can break those down to first principles, the raw materials, then we've got clean, purified air. So this reaction, unfortunately, was not discovered by Airlite. This was discovered many moons ago, back in the 1970s. What we've managed to do is replicate this reaction. We found a catalyst and a way of starting this on Earth in the built environment. So if we look at Airlite, what we've effectively got is a paint-based product. It's actually a natural mineral paint. So it contains no VOCs, no nasties itself. We can embed the technology into this, and we can put natural color pigments into it. Then we can apply it to walls. It does the job of paint in that it colors the walls, it colors the surfaces and seals them. However, at the surface of it, as we see on the image on the right, we're splitting down the airborne moisture, the humidity in the air around us, to create these radicals. These radicals then latch onto the pollutants and break them down, and we get the chain reaction at the surface. This is not something that absorbs or filters or sucks pollutants out the air, so hence it doesn't run out, it doesn't wear out or get full. At the surface of it, we replicate the reactions we see in the Earth's atmosphere. A bit there as well as breaking down the airborne pollutants, it also attacks and breaks down bacteria and viruses through 2 approaches. The first is, being a natural mineral paint, it's got a naturally high pH level. So bacteria, viruses, and mold cannot survive on the surface that's painted. The pH level is too high. So it's like, imagine fungus. Seeing fungus under a microscope shrivel up and die. It would die on the surface of it. It's not hospitable, as with most other paints and surface treatments that we see with atoms or ions within them. The second bit, and the true magic, is this active side. These negatively charged ions proactively attack the virus and the bacteria on the surface and break it down. So if you think of all the images we see of COVID, we see the big red sphere with the angry spikes around the side, the viral proteins. These negatively charged ions latch onto those pollutants, onto the proteins, and break down the cell wall, thus destroying the virus itself. So it goes above and beyond just being an inhospitable surface to something that, as I say, actively breaks down the pollutants and the bacteria. Beyond that, it is a completely natural reaction. So it doesn't contain any antibiotics, any biocides, or any nasties within that. It all comes down, I know I keep saying about it, but it's just unbelievable that it is this cool. It all comes down to this natural reaction at the surface and creating these ions that break it down. The result is that we do have something that is so much more than paint. As I say, it colours the walls, it does the job of paint. In terms of environmentally friendly, as we can see there, it's got a very low CO2 footprint. So this comes primarily from being a cold mix manufacturing process. It's a powder-based product, but also due to the fact that we're shipping this in powder, we're saving the footprint of transportation. The next bit, no VOCs. We are also cradle-to-cradle certified. The raw materials that we're using are actually a byproduct from the marble processing industry. So where we cut in big slabs of marble, that creates a lot of dust, a lot of calcium dust. That can be the raw material that we make our paint out of. Thus, we're saving waste and landfill from other processes and aligned to BREEAM, LEED and WELL. Once applied, the active side comes into it, reduces air pollution, breaks down nitrogen dioxide specifically, antimicrobial, prohibits mold growth on it, and also neutralizes smells in the same way the atmosphere. And finally, the cost to put it in, it's paint. It's similar to other environmentally friendly paints, but it is a different world in terms of costs and in terms of effort to retrofit in HVAC systems, air purifiers, or even installing living and green walls. So if we're looking at eco paints, we're in that park. If we're looking at the active side of it, we are leagues ahead of a lot of the solutions out there for what they're looking at. Just a note on the environmental credentials specifically, because the air purifying side and the active side is one thing. What we see the industry pulling us is as much around the environmental credentials as well. So it touched on the ultra low CO2 footprint, up to 76% lower than those of the traditional branded paints. The next bit, it creates no hazardous or flammable waste over the entire life cycle. So it contains no hazardous materials. It isn't flammable. It's cradle to cradle certified. We assigned green seal certified, blah, 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 aligned to the building certifications. And the final thing we touched on, it goes beyond just being an environmental product to being part of the solution. If we look at it in real life, we've obviously got all the test reports and everything independently verified to back up the claims of what it does. In perfect lab conditions, we reduce nitrogen dioxide levels by over 88%, where we've got air interacting with the paint. We've also got the antibacterial certifications, etc. But this is part of our work with Grosvenor Estates. So Grosvenor will announce later this week that we are now their paint of choice. So we've gone through a variety of tests. They have embraced Airlite due to the environmental credentials, but also down to the health and well-being impact of their employees and their tenants. So through their own tests here, the little chart on the right there shows two identical offices, adjoining offices, one painted with Airlite in the blue, one painted in a standard paint in the red. And this tracks the nitrogen dioxide levels at head height in those offices over a period of 3 weeks. And you can see Airlite continually reduced the nitrogen dioxide levels of between 49 and up to 95% in some of their tests. The other side, obviously, they can now say that the buildings that painted, the majority of the surfaces are naturally antimicrobial, killing bacteria and viruses that come into contact with it. And then the final bit being the environmental credentials. So they will put in their annual report about the reduced CO2 impact of switching to Airlite and removal of hazardous waste and VOCs for their workforce. But it's not just Grosvenor we've worked with. We launched in the UK last year, and we've already undertaken a number of projects with prestigious clients as start of validating the market need for such a product. So we worked with IKEA on a couple of marketing campaigns that they've done. We have painted parts of Kensington Palace. We've worked with JLL on their own estate. Airbus have painted their manufacturing site. That's the one over in Barcelona, actually. And that's around employee well-being. Mercedes-Benz, as we see the little tub on the right, so they did a little spin-off themselves for their e-vehicle campaign, So if you buy a Mercedes-Benz electric vehicle, you're not producing nitrogen dioxide. Therefore, let us help you break down the nitrogen dioxide that others are producing in your home environment. So they were giving away tubs of paint with people buying their electric vehicles. And Decathlon have taken it on as their preferred paint for their estate, primarily around employee well-being, but also shouting about it to their customers. And Lewis will talk a bit more on about this on the Bouygues side, but we've just signed a partnership with Bouygues to become their paint of choice, so used across their estate in a variety of different applications. I won't steal Lewis's thunder on that. So to surmise it all, really, it's the simplest solution to improving air quality and antimicrobial surfaces. It really is a drop-in solution. You can put chemicals on the wall, or we can put environmentally friendly chemicals on the wall, or we can put Airlite on the wall that colours the wall. It does the job of paint. It looks nice, but it's got all the additional benefits of replicating the reactions we see in nature in the built environment. Cleaner air, antimicrobial surfaces without harming the environment. Just a few bullet points on that. It's a standard available in 180 different colours, although we can colour match if there's a specific need for the majority of colours. It is fire rated. Effectively, we're putting marble on the walls, calcium. Class 0 is tested at Warrington Zovio Fire. And although shipped in powder, it's mixed with water at site. Once it's mixed with water, it looks like paint. It does the job of paint. You apply it with a brush, with a roller, with a spray, however you would with a normal paint. And we have an approved contractor scheme of people who've worked with it, as Leigh touched on earlier, the partnership that we have with Bell Group. So it really, what we believe, it really takes the next step forward in reducing the environmental impact and being part of the solution. And as you can see in the image up there, 100 square meters painted with Airlite is as effective as 100 square meters of mature trees at breaking down the toxins in the air. That's it from me. I'll leave my contact details on there, and if there's any questions, please do shout. But thank you very much for your time and your interest.
Thanks very much. Fascinating. And again, as I said in my sort of introduction, when I sort of heard of the product, thought it would be something that also Fusion21 members might be interested in. Chris, we've had a couple of questions which I will sort of address now, because I think they are sort of
okay,
relevant.
We'll go quick fire, and if we need to, we'll come back
before handing it over to Lewis. So the first one is, how long does the paint last in terms of how long will the iron aspect of the paint be active once it's applied before you have to repaint it?
Right, so the paint, once applied, it's like a regular paint, so it will last on the wall as long as a regular paint would. We've painted external facades. We painted a tunnel in Rome 12 years ago, and that hasn't needed touching up since. So the longevity is the same as a regular paint. It's not a scrubbable, washable finish, so it's not the same as those, but unless it's interacted or set to with a permanent marker or something, it will last like a regular paint. The active side of it, in theory, will never stop working. It's a catalyst. As long as there's light energy and there's airborne humidity or moisture in the air, it will split moisture. That's all it does. So we guarantee the active side of it for a minimum of 10 years. And as I say, the other comes down to in-use application.
Yeah, okay. And then the final question for you before handing over to Lewis. Have there been any studies about the impact applied in the social care setting? So, for example, care homes for the elderly in particular?
Not specific studies, although we have done a little research into this and some projects over in Italy where it was first uncovered. So there's two sides to this, I suppose. We've done the studies and the research on the effects of Airlite and how it purifies the air and breaks down the pollutants. Then there's a huge amount of third-party research into the effect of breaking down nitrogen dioxide and removing antimicrobial bodies from the surface as in that environment. But we ourselves have not done a direct comparison of such. Okay,
that's great. Okay, so let's now find a little bit more out about the application of the product. So organisation, as Chris said, that is adopting the use of Airlite. So over to you, Chris.
Hi all, and good afternoon, and thanks for joining us. My name's Chenery, and I'm Environment Manager at Bouygues. I thought we could just benefit by just touching on who exactly Bouygues are. I'm sure many of you will recognise the hoarding or the brand out and about, but we're actually quite a complex organisation with sort of business interests everywhere, really. So we're a global organisation headquartered in France. We have multiple industries, so construction being the main company, so telecoms, media, energy services, infrastructure, and digital solutions as well. So if you've ever been to France, if you've been to France recently, you may have noticed when you cross the border, your phone changes to Bouygues. As I say, we're active around about 100 countries and employ around 127,000 people. And I work specifically in that. If you look towards the bottom right-hand corner in the entity Bouygues Energies and Services. So where we fit in, so we operate within sort of three main areas, which is energy, infrastructure, and buildings. So the energy side looks at sort of battery storage, smart energy grids, heating centres or district heat centres, and solar PV farms. So I think at the moment we're just about to start on the UK's largest solar farm, and that's in Llanwen in Wales, and that's about 300 acres and a capacity of about 75 megawatts. So quite a heavy focus on renewables. We've also got a infrastructure side, so that's looking at street lighting and smart motorways, and then the buildings, so your facilities management sort of orientated services, but that also includes workplace design, energy efficiency, and we sort of have a bit of a range of clients really, so across both public and private sector, so schools, hospitals, universities, defence, and looking at the sort of commercial aspects as well. So Body Shop is one of our FM clients, so heavy focus on sort of the sustainability aspect. I think that the FM side of the business, ordinarily we have around 40 contracts that are live, so that's a mixture of hard and soft FM services, and that's a footprint of around 500 buildings, so it's quite a significant impact, I suppose. And all of our clients have a different set of priorities or a different agenda, especially when it comes to the issue of sustainability. So as I mentioned, all of the services, all of the business entities follow this process, which is design, build, operate, and maintain. But if you break down each of those processes, no matter what sector we're working in, all of these in some capacity does and have a significant impact on the environment. But before we sort of move on, I thought it'd be quite a good idea to sort of revisit some of the other sustainability issues in the built environment. I think over the last few months we've lost track of, what are our priorities, what are we focusing on, what are the general trends. So before we dive deep into sort of air quality, I thought we'd revisit some of the impacts from our industry, such as climate change, resource depletion, and lack of biodiversity and natural habitats. I mean, just by building a project or occupying a space of land, we're reducing that. Acidification of our oceans as well. Again, sorry, doubled up there. And air pollution. I think we also need to be aware of sort of single-use plastics and general single-use items in general as well. I think we'll all, within recent months, have seen a high volume of PPE dotted around everywhere. It's, you get on the train, it's there. You go down the road, in the park, it's there as well. So, although we are focused on the bigger things, air pollution, climate change, whatever, we do need to be considering these impacts as well. So, let's go to the next slide. As I mentioned, we're discussing. Sorry, how do I go back? So yeah, as I say, we're discussing air quality today, and it's quite unique in its sort of approach. It's a twofold problem, and it has impacts, both health and climate impacts. And I think that video earlier to get the scene started was really sort of made that hit home, if that makes sense. So as Chris also said, 7 million preventable deaths per year. If we compare that to sort of COVID and the fatalities or death levels there, significantly further ahead. But not afforded quite the same urgency. And maybe because it's always been there and it's a slow moving sort of impact rather than, you know, the pandemic wise, but still a significant one. Also having impacts on society due to the negative impacts on work productivity, the economy, as well as the associated healthcare costs. But I won't go into too much detail as that, as I think it was being covered quite adequately earlier. So, as I mentioned, the issues earlier and the issue of air quality and pollution is such a huge and complex issue. And there is no one fixed solution. It requires a number of inputs, a number of different thought process and whatnot. But we do know that technology and innovation plays a huge part in that process. And certainly within our company and with all of our companies, that is certainly, we rely on those and that they're at the forefront, which is, I suppose, how we came to be linked up with Airlite about this time last year, I think it was. And that was through one of our global innovation and startup programs called Matching Up, whereby departments like myself or organizations within our business get matched up with startup or innovative companies that can add value and make us, you know, improve, drive sustainability and give us a better offering. So it's a bit of a long process whereby we sort of got Airlite, went through the process of multiple stages around a period of meeting different departments, clients, procurement, and sort of generally assessing where they could fit in or if they could fit in, and then following through to a trial stage. But what it all sort of came down to was the fact that knowing that we needed to make a difference as a construction focused company in both FM and construction, we're using a huge volume of paint primarily, whether that's in sort of planned maintenance, reactive works, projects, even CSR projects, and just general construction development throughout our sort of value chain. So given that and taking into consideration the amount of hazardous waste that we produce each year, we knew that we needed to come to a solution. So Airlite fitting into that innovation program, Matching Up, was a sort of natural fit. So if I can pivot slightly back to the sort of key sectors that Bouygues work in: government, local and central, healthcare, education, both lower and higher, defence and security, and commercial. And I think everyone within this webinar either interacts or work within those environments on an almost daily basis, if not more frequently. And we also sort of take another step back and look where the locations are of most of those buildings or those contracts. They're generally centered in the urban environment or cities whereby air quality is generally lower or the issue of air quality is higher. Especially when we look at numbers 2 and 3, healthcare and education. Healthcare is sort of self-explanatory, but education, you've got a whole group of young people, thousands of young people each day exposed to potentially bad air quality, and that can have, you know, as Chris mentioned and the video sort of portrayed at the start, an impact on development, an impact on concentration, cognitive ability, and so on and so forth. So yeah, the sort of Airlite and the sectors that we work in seem to be a natural fit in addressing those issues. So as I mentioned, Airlite came through on our Matching Up program, and part of that Matching Up program, as I mentioned as well, is the trial phase. So as I say, we manage a number of schools. So we feel that we found after much deliberation, came to the perfect trial location to test out whether it fit within our sort of processes and whether it was effective, just because we had to do that due diligence ourselves. So we found a school, and it was located next to a major and heavily congested artery road into London, one that has relatively little or zero respite. The air quality on this particular road is sort of visible. So if you're looking far and driving into the city, you can start to see the smog, start to smell it, and that creates issues. And you think if you plonk that next to, if you put situate a school next to that, then the issues are so evident, aren't they? And this particular school was so close to the road that in fact during the sort of warmer months they were having to keep the windows closed because you could just smell the sort of the petrol sort of diesely smell that you get with lots of traffic. But that obviously has an impact for the classroom as well, because you've got you've got a load of hyperactive or kids in the summer, and that has an effect on behavior, concentration, and so on and so forth. So the methodology that we used was that we chose 2 rooms directly next to each other, and they had the same usage, same occupancy levels, and yeah, same age of kids were within them as well. So we then procured and installed air quality monitors, and over a period of the month, or period of I think it was about a month, maybe just over, we took around 86,000 readings, and the results that we found, the results that we obtained to the end was quite compelling. So this is what it looks like. As you can see, the top line of data, so the orange line of data, is the unpainted room. So you can see that it's significantly higher than the painted room. And I've also built into here the World Health Organization mean levels. So it's constantly above that. But the room that had been painted was significantly low and pinned to 0 throughout a lot of the period. So, and this is the same for ozone as well. So ozone tends to follow the same chemical process of nitrogen dioxide. Sorry. So this was a bit of the key results, or the overview of the results of the school trial when we crunched the numbers. We found between the 2 rooms, there was a 96.4% difference in levels of nitrogen dioxide in between the 2 rooms. So absolutely sort of outstanding results. The hazardous waste obviously been taken down completely because we had no paintings that would be classed as hazardous leaving the site or coming into site. Using the same method as Leigh did, we compared the EPD, so the environmental product declaration, and calculated that there was 62% lower when comparing that to an existing product. So that basically resulted in a partnership, as Chris mentioned earlier, partnership between ourselves and Airlite, meaning that they are the favoured supplier of choice where it is feasible to use it. So it's not always feasible to use it in certain sites. It's just not feasible, but wherever we can, we will. So as Chris put up an image earlier, that partnership obtained really positive press coverage. So it's good for both companies to raise the profile of sustainability of both of us. And now we're in the stages of rolling that out. So using that, painting the rest of the schools that we manage, and wherever we can. So it's not an overnight process, but it's getting real traction within the organisation. We've also got we're doing some continued results with another one of our business entities or partners, and this is testing in a student accommodation scenario. So the methodology is slightly different now. So we have 4 monitors in adjacent rooms. 2 of the rooms have standard painting, so your off-the-shelf stuff. One of them has Airlite walls and ceiling, and the last one has just Airlite ceiling. So we can direct you towards the impressive line of data here, which is the orange line down at the bottom. You can see that that's basically pinned to 0 parts per billion throughout the whole period. The second line of data, which is which is higher but still lower than the others, is the room with Airlite ceiling. So we can see that having a difference. So again, this is a bit of a watch this space scenario, really, because the test's ongoing. But as I say, we're presenting this data to the client and to the developer, and obviously they're as impressed as we are looking at the data as well. So again, to summarize the sort of benefits of a partnership with a product like Airlite, I thought it was a good idea to sort of take a step back a bit and look at the sort of pillars or the principles of sustainability and how we feed into that. So the social benefits are pretty straightforward. We've got improved well-being for the staff and users, whether that's a patient, whether that's a colleague, whether that's a child at school. Our painters are exposed to less harmful substances. You know, we have full-time painters and decorators within the organisation, generally working with product, you know, 6-7 hours a day sometimes. So switching over to a less harmful product is a really good message to send to our employees as well, that we're looking out for them as well. As again, environmental, so reduces air pollutants like we've discussed, effective at reducing harmful pathogens and virus, something that's really obviously very topical at the moment. Reducing CO2, promotes the principles of the circular economy. So obviously it's cradle to cradle certified, which is a really good message, again, taking back to our clients and talking with our staff about. And economic as well. It's reducing the cost of air conditioning units. It's reducing the need to install expensive biophilic design within our buildings as well, and also not having to maintain them. So a low OPEX cost as well. And another key benefit for Bouygues is that you can keep areas open when you paint with it. So if you think that we're, particularly now, given everything that's going on in a busy hospital, and you close an area off to paint and so it airs out and whatever and dries, then that can have a significant effect on the operation and can create quite a disturbance, you know. So having the option of applying something and keeping it open is a real benefit for us. So that's, as I mentioned, that's all well and good, and partnerships like ours and Bell as well is certainly a step in the right direction. It's a small step in the right direction, but it's one that is quantifiable. I did think it was a benefit to now sort of look at what else we can do above painting rooms and that. So I think to sort of really understand it, or to really make a tangible difference, there needs to be a sort of three-tier approach, a more holistic approach. And I believe that to be at an individual level, at an organizational level, and at governmental level or regulatory level. There are regulations in place, but I think we can go further. And just a few tips and what I've learned recently as well, and just to make so we can contribute to making a bit of more of a healthier society, and more sustainable city to live in, a more sustainable village to live in. So from an individual level, just a few things that I've done recently is change my energy supplier to ensuring that it is a renewable source, that the impact is lower, that it's from a green, so it's green energy, and reducing the amount of pollutants, and ensuring that it's not from, it's not from coal, although that's fairly rare these days. As an individual level at work as well, engage your FM team. Ask them what they're doing to improve air quality in your building. I know not everyone's not at work at the moment, but as you do get back to work, you'll have more of a voice. And talking from experience, if you can get enough voices to raise the issue, you will see the cogs turn eventually. And I think that's a really, really powerful thing that people can do. From a business and organizational level, again, you can also look at, who's powering your building, where's the energy coming from, and get engaged with those sorts of talks as well. It's so easy to switch your provider and obviously lower your emissions, and something good that you can tell your clients as well, and that may help you win work. Say that you're engaged with these discussions, and it's important for your staff. As well, dig into procurement, I think, as a business. So look at prioritizing local suppliers, lower your delivery mileage, look for products with low or no VOCs, like Airlite, I suppose. Have a look at your EPDs. They do look a bit overwhelming sometimes, but look at what's coming into your supply chain. As soon as you get fluent with it, you'll be able to say, okay, that's less damaging, that's better for the environment, that will reduce air quality or improve air quality and whatnot. So getting involved with those sorts of conversations. Sorry, dry mouth. And finally, so at a government level as well. So there needs to be more done from higher up, I suppose. So I need to be investing in clean decarbonisation of the national grid and support renewable energy networks. And we have a massive land mass, although we do think we're a small country. We are, but we have a lot of land mass that could be invested in renewable energy sources. More incentivization for the safest and most sustainable methods of construction, and discourage the use of known toxic materials within standards as well. So I think another key thing as well is investing in air monitors. You can do that, individually, organisationally, and also for government. I think, I can't remember who it was, someone famous side, Kelvin, I believe it was, that said if you can't monitor it, you can't manage it. So understand within the areas that you work, within your home, what's going on and how do I change it. So just a few sort of suggestions there, sort of headline things that I think we can do. But I'll just focus on one thing that Bouygues are doing to try and commit to a sort of lower carbon future, and also address our air quality. And within Bouygues Energy, so our largest emission source is our fleet. Similar to Bell, we have a large fleet of anywhere around, I think it's around 350 vehicles at the moment. And by switching to EVs, by investing in fast charging points, we can start to tackle that issue. I think the current percentage is around 10% in Bouygues at the moment. So we want to try and get up to 20% within the sort of next year or so. Then again, we're sort of restricted by range, weight restrictions for some of the EVs, lack of fast charging points, especially in our rural areas. So we do have contracts in rural areas that we can't do that. So we're at the, we're making a good chunk into what we can do, but we need to do more, and we recognise that. And this is one of our key focuses. Another angle on the fleet is using telemetry, so understanding where our vehicles are. So if we have, just for instance, we have a job over in West London that needs to be done, and we're sending in an engineer from East London, that makes no sense. But using telemetry and understanding where our fleet is, who's where, we can send the nearest person, and that's having a real difference. We're also looking at driving styles as well. So these telemetry systems have a way of recording who's idling, who's fast accelerating, and it's not, they're not doing this to be irresponsible. It's just driving styles. So educating them as well, and highlighting who needs more education, who needs to go on driving courses potentially, and also looking at rewarding good driving behaviours as well. So just little things, but they do make a difference. So as I say, it's a start, and it's only one of the things given the time sort of restriction that we have. But yeah, I think that sort of summarise it for me, if that's okay. And yeah, thanks for listening.
Excellent, thanks. Thanks very much, Lewis. That's again really interesting and great to hear the journey that you're on. I'm sort of conscious of time, but we have a couple of questions, and we also have a little bit longer. So hopefully that you, our audience, will bear with us. So one of the things, and again, I suppose it's a question for all of you, but specifically relating to Airlite, which is around its costs. So again, we've learned of the environmental, we've learned of its its ability to do so much more than ordinary paint. But does it come with a cost, and how do organisations address any additional costs associated with using it? Is there a sort of offset? So I'll ask that in terms of each of you, but perhaps I'll start with you, Chris, in terms of just that sort of basic question, and then from a sort of your perspective, Leigh, in terms of a contractor, your ability to use it or recommend it above something else, and then Lewis, perhaps you could just focus from that sort of end user in terms of the cost benefit. So yeah, start with Chris.
Yeah, so I suppose, I mean, Airlite is positioned as a premium product. It's priced as eco paints, and I think if we look at it on a supplied and applied square meter rate, there is a premium that's aligned to that sort of space. there are additional costs in terms of the manufacturing side. We are unable to get those down to match the price of the mass-produced products at the moment. However, as I touched on the slides, the idea is that we are positioning this as a fair substitute to paint. We're not positioning as the air purification side or the green wall or the living wall side. And if we're comparing it to the benefits of those, it's a completely different ballpark. And then the service and maintenance side. But I think if I pass over to Lewis and Leigh on that, because they probably give a more holistic view.
Leigh, from if you start that from a sort of from a Bell Group perspective and the conversations you may have had with, and perhaps also because I know that we touched on this before, those in the public, as you know, most Fusion members are local authorities, housing associations, but we do work in the wider public sector.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So yeah, as Chris has quite honestly advised there, it's this product isn't a like for like comparison to traditional paint products, and we shouldn't compare. Therefore, we shouldn't really compare price either, because it's not a like for like comparison. Having said that, yes, of course, based on the type of premium product it is, there is an additional cost versus a more traditional product that you would choose. But I think the statement, to quote myself from earlier on, it's around commercial discussions to drive sustainability. And of course, where possible, we don't want to add cost into the supply chain and to customers. But this product is not a comparison of a traditional product that would be used. And where we're working, so we are doing trials with a large social housing provider as it stands. The case study I put up earlier on was for a student accommodation provider. We've actually done some work for Bouygues and on the Met Police, and these are all environments that it would probably be easy enough to say that they're all price conscious, shall we say, as we all are. So there is value engineering that can be done on any project, and there's creative ways to look at it. So, for example, Bouygues put up the example there of a site where they've painted only the ceilings as well as doing the walls and the ceiling. So there's different ways to look at it. But yes, it's been used by public sector bodies such as the police and social housing providers as it stands. But it's not, it's not a comparison of another product, and I think that's the thing that we need to get away from. We're not trying to, or we shouldn't be comparing one against the other. So yeah, hopefully that answers from a contractor's point of view.
Yeah, and then finally over to you, and also then Lewis, an additional question alongside that, which is whether or not you've used the product, the Airlite, in terms of on external structures, bridges or flyovers or any sort of those sort of larger rather than sort of in a sort of domestic or office environment.
Okay, yeah, so I suppose I'll just be echoing Leigh's comments initially. We're not comparing it to a paint, we're comparing it to something different than the paint. We're comparing it to the same offering as, reduce cost on AC operation. We're not having to operate or install green walls, so it's significantly cheaper than that, but we're not trying to take it to our clients as this is your option, this is your only option. But as I say, and as Leigh says as well, we've got a whole range of different clients, and some of them have the sort of the ability to be able to use it, and some that don't. I mean, having used it in schools and in the public sector, and it's not creating too much friction there, so I know that it is feasible. But yeah, as I say, we're not comparing it to regular paint. But we are using it in our bids as well. So when we go to bids and tenders as well, we're looking at it as an offering. So this is a bolt-on. If you want to spend the money and have this benefit, then we can do that for you. So yeah. In terms of external, I'm not sure if we have or not yet. We were looking at doing it at one of the theatres in London recently, but we haven't. But I know that Airlite has been used on a number of murals throughout the world and in the UK with a number of brands as well. So I mean, I'll probably ping the question back over to Chris, because he'll probably be able to answer that question better than I will.
Yeah, I mean,
Okay,
we have an indoor and an external version. So exterior, we can paint the facade of buildings. We painted the tunnel in Rome, as we touched about. And there's significant interest in murals from a PR campaign and advertising. With Bouygues, we have discussed with I think it's your highways team or the guys that manage the infrastructure, could we paint almost some of the motorway furniture, some of the signage, some of the bridges, overpasses, underpasses, and yes, it's all possible.
Okay, I know that you've addressed this before, but we've had a question around flame retardants and Class O, and I think you said in your presentation, Chris, that it was, or it did achieve those levels.
Yes, it was, and we've got the independent testing from Warrington Soviet Fire on that.
Yeah. Okay. Again, just sort of conscious of time, and sort of final question, which again links to a question that we've had from one of the audience, which is really about low VOC paints have been around for a few years, but how far has the market, how far is the industry embracing both that changes in technology, and also taking into account the need to be more environmentally friendly? I know that a number of you have talked about procurement. I know from a Fusion21 perspective that we are building into, when we procure and when we advise our members about procurement, to building in these sorts of environmental factors. But what's your sort of experience in terms of organizations embracing these agendas? I'll start with Lewis, then Chris, and finish with Leigh.
So yeah, so our clients are coming to us and asking us what we are doing about addressing, well, the whole breadth of sustainability now. So if you look at a tender, invitation to tender now, there'll be a range of different questions and requirements to see what we're doing in every sort of space. So yeah, VOC's not, I don't think that specific one's come up, but it has, yeah, the requirements getting larger and larger and larger by the tender, I suppose. So yeah, that's to sort of summarize it in a sentence or two.
Yeah, thank you.
I think Lou's made an interesting point there about it from our side, because VOCs, it almost feels like a nice to have. And in a really strange way, so is nitrogen dioxide. Even though nitrogen dioxide is toxic and will kill you, the number one thing is CO2, which is not toxic. We're all breathing it out, but it's the one that's reported. It's the one that's measured. It's the one that goes in the annual report. So that's the front of mind. Of all the pictures we've done, nitrogen dioxide is the attention getter. The environmental credentials is generally the deal breaker. And then how we can spin the fact that we're doing good across the range of other things. But I really believe, given the current climate, we will start to see that change now as we start to understand the health impacts of the things that we are putting into our build spaces.
Thanks. Finally, then Leigh.
Yeah, I mean, to answer your original question, I think I outlined in my part of the presentation that I think the industry, from a manufacturing point of view, has done a really good job over the last 20 years of getting products down to more acceptable VOC levels. So it's the applicator of those products that need to try and take that next step forward. And if I'm being brutally honest, we still currently buy more of the higher solvent-based products that contain more VOCs for painting, for example, woodwork, than we do the water-based products. Now, the products are there, so that's why we are trying to drive that change. And okay, that's not always a conscious decision. A lot of that's driven through, maybe the client request, or, as I said in my presentation, the perception almost that those solvent-based products are better than the water-based products. So that's why I encourage everybody listening to try and do more, and we're doing our bit. But also to echo what Chris said, there's more than just VOCs. I think we need to consider in terms of our product base, whether it's paint, whether it's, you know, wood, whether it's UPVC, whether, you know, whatever materials that you're using in your respective industries. We all need to really look at how we can make a difference. And if there's something there that we can choose that's going to benefit, you know, we should really look to push that forward. And that's certainly what we are trying to do our end. So hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks for that. And that's yeah, a great note to finish on. So I'm going to wrap up this afternoon's session. I hope, like me, you found it really interesting, thought-provoking, and again, some new ideas that we're sharing with you. So I want to thank you, our audience, for being there this afternoon. Really appreciate you being there. I would also then want to thank Lewis, Chris, and Leigh for their time in the presentation. I can give you a round of applause, and I'm sure the audience will do so. So thank you all for taking part. Thank you all for attending, and please tune in to find out the next Fusion 21 webinar, which hopefully will be of interest and should be details in your inbox over the next day or so. So thanks very much. Have a great afternoon. Stay safe.
See ya.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thanks all.
Thank you.